The stars above Earth are not as distant as we've been led to believe. In the vast expanse of the universe, among countless galaxies and planets, beings from worlds unknown have been watching us. One such being, an alien who had only ever observed the strange human race from afar, was about to experience life as one of us. Her mission? To understand the human condition, its emotions, its limitations, and its strength by spending 90 days inside a human body. What she didn't anticipate was the shock of what it truly meant to be human. The body she inhabited was not just a vessel. It was a world of sensations, desires, and weaknesses she could never have imagined. The pain, the joy, the struggle, it was all far more overwhelming than she had prepared for. And for the first time in her existence, she realized that human beings, with all their flaws, might just be the most resilient species in the universe. The alien had observed countless worlds, cataloged civilizations, and studied life forms that had evolved far beyond humanity's capabilities. She had seen worlds where life was purely mechanical, where emotion had no place. But nothing prepared her for what it felt like to be human. The physical sensations were intoxicating, the emotional highs and lows overwhelming. She had no choice but to experience everything, every heartbeat, every touch, every moment of pain or pleasure. It was all so chaotic. And yet, in the chaos, there was something extraordinary, something she hadn't expected. Despite their struggles, humans had an unshakable will to survive, to love, to fight for each other. The alien couldn't help but be fascinated by the intricacies of human emotions, the complexity of human relationships, and the depth of their resilience. It was as if, in spite of all their flaws, they were capable of greatness. But the longer she remained in the human body, the more she began to feel a deep confusion. The emotions were becoming real. The lines between her true self and the person she had inhabited were blurring. What would happen to her when her 90 days were over? Would she be able to return to her own body, her own form, without carrying a piece of humanity with her? Could she truly go back to being the detached, logical being she once was? As the days went on, her understanding of humanity shifted. What was once an experiment, an exercise in observation, began to feel like an irreversible transformation. The body she was in, its struggles, its passions, its joys, was starting to become part of her. And in doing so, she found herself questioning everything she had ever known. Was there more to life than logic and observation? Was it possible that the very thing she had been sent to study was the one thing she had underestimated? On day 85, a startling realization shook her to the core. She had learned to blend in with the humans she lived among, to mimic their ways, their behaviors, their conversations. But there was something inside her now, a spark she couldn't quite explain. Was it empathy? Was it love? The emotions, once foreign to her, were growing stronger, and the more she embraced them, the harder it became to remember who she truly was. But it wasn't just her emotions that were beginning to shift. Her physical body, this borrowed human form, was changing in ways she couldn't control. Small, inexplicable sensations started to manifest. Pain, not just physical, but emotional pain that seemed to bleed into every part of her. The alien's logical mind began to unravel as it tried to comprehend the intensity of human life. She was feeling things that humans struggled to understand, let alone explain. And in doing so, she felt herself drifting further from her original mission. As the 90 days drew closer to an end, she realized one terrifying truth. she wasn't sure she could return to her former self. The experience had fundamentally altered her perception of what it meant to be alive, to be real. The very essence of humanity, the complexity of thought, the unpredictability of emotions had consumed her. How could she leave all of this behind? Her final days in the human body were marked by an overwhelming sense of urgency. The alien knew her time was running out. She had to decide whether to return to her own form and report back to her superiors, or to break the rules of her mission and stay in the human world. The consequences of her choice were unclear. Would she be punished for her emotional attachment to humanity? Or would her decision set off a chain of events that would change the course of history? As the final hours of her 90-day experiment approached, the alien stood at the crossroads of her existence. What would become of her? Would she return to her home planet, where she could live free of the emotional turmoil she had come to understand? Or would she choose to stay, embracing the human experience in all its painful, beautiful complexity? But just as she was about to make her decision, an unexpected visitor arrived. Someone she had never seen before. Someone who seemed to know more about her than she was comfortable with. This mysterious figure had a message, a warning, perhaps that would force the alien to question everything she had learned. Could it be true? Had her mission been a farce all along? The alien's mind raced. Was the truth she had uncovered worth the risk of staying in a world she barely understood? Or would leaving now, before she became too entangled in human emotions, be her only way to preserve the mission and her very identity? With time running out, the alien girl found herself facing the ultimate dilemma: leave or stay. But in the final moments before she could act, something happened that left her in shock, something that would change the course of her journey forever. What was it? And what did it mean for the future of humanity? The answers, like everything else in her human experience, were more complicated than she could have ever imagined. The alien stood frozen, her mind racing as she faced the stranger who had suddenly appeared before her. Her body, once filled with the smooth, calculated motions of her mission, now felt foreign and erratic. She had spent 90 days in this human body, observing, learning, experiencing, but now, in this moment of crisis, it was as though her very existence had become unstable. The stranger's presence was the catalyst that pushed her into a deep uncertainty she had never felt before. The figure before her was cloaked in shadows, their features hidden beneath a hood. It was not the appearance that unsettled her, but the overwhelming sense of familiarity they carried. She felt as though she had encountered this person before, in some distant memory, or perhaps it was just a trick of her emotions. The stranger took a step forward, their voice calm but urgent. "You've made a mistake," the stranger said softly, their words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. "You didn't just come to study humans. You came here to be changed." The alien flinched at the words. She had been trained for this moment. Her mission was clear: observe humanity, understand their weaknesses and strengths, and report back. She had not signed up to be changed. And yet, over the course of these 90 days, she felt the pull of something she hadn't anticipated, something powerful and unpredictable. Emotions, raw and unrelenting, had begun to bleed into her consciousness. Fear, hope, and even longing were creeping into her thoughts, interfering with the objectivity she'd been programmed to maintain. "I'm here to learn," she said, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty she hadn't meant to show. Nothing more. The figure tilted their head, as though they could see right through her, reading her every hesitation, every flicker of doubt. You've learned more than you think. You've become one of them. And that's where you're wrong. You're not supposed to become human. The alien felt a surge of panic rise within her, but she quickly squashed it down. She was in control. She had to be. But the stranger's words echoed in her mind, like a warning she couldn't escape. What did they mean? She had only just begun to understand what it meant to be human, but now she was being told that her very presence among them was a mistake. She had witnessed so much in the past 3 months, the intensity of human relationships, the fragile beauty of their emotions, and the depth of their struggles. It had fascinated her. But now, for the first time, she questioned her purpose. What had she truly come to study? The human race had proven to be unpredictable, far more complicated than she had imagined. The truth was, she had never truly understood what it meant to be human until she was inside one of their bodies. Her days had been filled with overwhelming experiences, the sting of loss, the rush of joy, the deep connection with another soul. She had been unprepared for the rawness of it all. And yet, there was something undeniably powerful about it, the resilience, the drive to keep moving forward despite every obstacle, every heartbreak. She had never seen anything like it in the galaxies she had explored. But now, the stranger's words cast doubt on everything she had come to believe. Had her mission been a lie? Had she been sent to Earth, not just to observe, but to become part of something far more dangerous, something that could change the entire course of her existence? "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to remain composed. The stranger's eyes glinted with something unreadable. "You know why. You've felt it. The change. It's already begun." Her heart raced. She had felt it. How could she deny it? The way she had become more human with every passing day. The emotions that swirled inside her, the way they made her feel, connected to the people around her. She had tried to ignore it, to focus on the mission, but it had become impossible to shut out the growing sense of attachment. She had learned to care. She had learned to fear. She had learned to love. "You're not just a passive observer anymore," the stranger continued. "You're becoming part of the very thing you came to understand. And once you've crossed that line, there's no going back." The alien's mind reeled. Could it be true? Had she already crossed that line? She had never been allowed to form attachments, to let herself be changed by the world she had studied. Her mission was to remain detached, to stay outside the chaos of emotions and experiences that defined the beings she studied. But humanity had proven to be different. They were messy, unpredictable, but in their messiness, they were alive in a way she could never have understood until now. The more she felt, the more she realized how deeply entwined her fate had become with theirs. The stranger's voice snapped her back to the present. "You're not the only one who's changed. There are others like you sent to Earth to learn, to study, to observe. But not all of them have the same intentions as you. And that's where it gets dangerous." Her pulse quickened. Others like her? How could that be possible? She had thought she was the only one, the only being sent to infiltrate the human race and return with knowledge. But the stranger's words suggested something far more sinister. Who were these other beings? And what did they want? Before she could ask another question, the stranger stepped closer, their eyes locking with hers. "You need to leave. Now, before they find you." The alien felt a chill run down her spine. Leave? How could she leave now, when she was so entangled in this world? There were people she had come to care for, experiences she couldn't just erase. But the stranger's warning left her no choice. The tension in the air thickened as something deep within her, the alien part of her, knew that time was running out. She had made a mistake, yes, but now she had to find a way to fix it. "Who are they?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and urgency. "What do they want with me?" The stranger didn't answer right away. Instead, they stepped back, their gaze lingering on her for a moment longer before they turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving the alien girl alone with the growing dread that something much darker was unfolding beneath the surface. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized one undeniable truth. She was no longer just a visitor in the human world. She was part of something much bigger, and now there was no turning back. The alien girl stood in the stillness of the room, the stranger's words echoing in her mind like a haunting refrain. "Before they find you." But who was they? What did they want with her? Her thoughts raced as she tried to make sense of everything she had learned and everything she hadn't. Her time on Earth had already blurred the lines between her mission and something more personal. She had begun to care for the humans she had interacted with, their simple joys, their complicated relationships, and their deep, unwavering desire to survive. She had learned to feel empathy, something she never thought possible for her kind. But the stranger's warning was clear. Her transformation, her immersion into humanity, wasn't just a matter of observation anymore. It had made her a target. The air felt heavier now, charged with an energy she couldn't quite place. The quiet of the night outside seemed almost oppressive, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a reminder that she was running out of time. Her 90 days were almost up. And yet, the path forward felt uncertain, dangerous even. She had to know who was after her. She had to find out what had gone wrong, and if there was still a way to escape before it was too late. The alien felt the pull of urgency in her veins, but even as she moved to leave, something stopped her. It was a nagging thought, a fragment of someone she hadn't fully processed. Her human interactions had grown deeper than she'd expected. People she had met, shared moments with, now flashed in her mind. The faces of those she had become close to, even those she hadn't yet fully understood. What if they were involved in this? What if they were in danger too? The alien hesitated, a wave of dread washing over her. She had to protect them, even if it meant putting herself in harm's way. The decision was as clear as it was terrifying. She had to face whatever was coming, whatever force was hunting her down. She stepped into the darkened street, the world around her seemingly unchanged, yet she felt the weight of it pressing in on her. The air was thick, heavy with the sense of something lurking just beyond her vision. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound more menacing. Her instincts screamed that she wasn't alone. Her body, her borrowed human body, wasn't accustomed to such heightened awareness. It was fragile, vulnerable. The sensations she had once taken for granted now felt like a reminder of just how limited her time on Earth really was. Her mind struggled to reconcile the strength she had witnessed in humans with the weakness she felt in herself, this new form. She was no longer the detached observer, but a part of this world, filled with all its complexities and dangers. As she moved further into the city, the familiar hum of life around her seemed to grow fainter, replaced by a foreboding silence. Her heart raced. She had to make contact, find the others, find out what was really going on. The stranger's warning about others like her only deepened the mystery. Were there more of her kind on Earth, already entangled in human lives? Were they the ones who were hunting her, or was it something else entirely? She turned a corner and froze. The street ahead of her was eerily quiet. No cars, no people. Just an unnatural stillness that gripped the air, suffocating every sound, every breath. And then she heard it. A distant sound, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps, growing louder with each passing second. Her body tensed, her instincts screaming for her to run. But where? There was nowhere to hide. She was exposed. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Her eyes darted from shadow to shadow, searching for any sign of movement, any hint of the presence she felt creeping closer. The tension in the air was suffocating. She wasn't sure if she could handle it any longer. This was it. The moment she had been dreading. The moment when everything she had come to understand about herself, about humanity, would be put to the test. And then she saw them. Figures emerged from the darkness, stepping out of the shadows with an eerie precision. They were unlike anything she had encountered before, tall, angular, with strange, almost otherworldly features. Their eyes glowed with an unsettling light, an unnatural hue that sent a chill through her veins. They didn't move like humans. Their movements were calculated, mechanical, as if they were perfectly synchronized in their pursuit. The alien girl's breath hitched in her throat. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity. These beings were here for her, and they had been here all along. Her heart pounded harder in her chest. She had to act. She had to fight. The 90 days had taught her that humans were capable of extraordinary things when faced with danger. Could she tap into that same resilience? Could she summon the strength to survive, to protect the people she'd come to care for? The figures closed in, their steps synchronized, as though they were a single entity rather than multiple beings. The air seemed to grow colder, the shadows pressing in around her. She had never felt so small, so fragile, yet somewhere deep inside, she knew that running wasn't an option. There was something at stake far bigger than just her survival. It was about the future of the humans she'd come to understand, of the connections she had made, the experiences she had lived. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. There had to be a way out of this. She couldn't let them take her, not when she had finally started to understand what it meant to be human. She had to protect this world, these people, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had become. But the figures didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to send a cold shiver down her spine. One of them stepped forward, the glow in their eyes intensifying. "You've learned too much," it said, its voice sharp and mechanical, a sound that reverberated in her chest. "Now you must pay the price." And with that, the world around her seemed to collapse, the walls of her understanding breaking down as the true depth of the danger she was in became terrifyingly clear. The stakes had never been higher. Would she fight for her humanity? Or would she be lost forever in the cold, calculating hands of the forces that sought to control her? The alien girl stood frozen, her breath shallow as the figures before her closed in, their glowing eyes piercing through the dark like predators ready to strike. She felt the weight of their presence, the oppressive pressure building with every step they took. The words they had spoken echoed in her mind. "You've learned too much. Now you must pay the price." The chill of their warnings settled deep within her bones. There was no denying it now. This was no ordinary threat. Whatever these beings were, they weren't here just to observe. They were here to erase, But as the tension mounted, something unexpected happened. The figure at the front of the group paused. It was subtle, but the alien girl's sharp senses caught the shift. The being's gaze wavered for just a fraction of a second, a glimmer of uncertainty flickering in its eyes. The alien girl's heart skipped a beat. Was it doubt? Fear? Or perhaps something more troubling? Something that didn't fit with the perfect, cold precision of the creatures in front of her? Before she could react, a loud crash shattered the silence. A burst of light streaked across the sky, illuminating the streets with an intense flare. The figures flinched, their eyes momentarily blinded by the brightness. The alien girl's mind raced. What was that? It wasn't a human attack. Humans didn't have technology like this. But whatever it was, it had stopped the figures in their tracks, their coordinated movements faltering for the briefest of moments. And then, from the shadows, a new figure appeared. A silhouette that cut through the darkness like a knife. The alien girl's heart pounded faster. This wasn't one of the figures that had been hunting her. No, this was something else entirely. Something familiar. The newcomer moved swiftly, with purpose, and before the alien could process what was happening, the stranger from before the one who had warned her stepped forward into the light, their face finally visible. "You're too late," the stranger said, their voice cool, but there was an edge to it that hadn't been there before. "I gave you a chance to leave." The figures before them recoiled as though they were in the presence of something far more dangerous than the alien girl. Their eyes flashed with something akin to recognition. One of them spoke, its voice cold and clipped. You should not be here." The alien girl's mind was spinning. What was going on? The stranger, the mysterious figure who had come to warn her, was now facing down these beings, these invaders, like they were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. She couldn't make sense of it. The stranger wasn't human, that much was clear. But who were they? What was their connection to the beings hunting her? The stranger took a step forward, their eyes narrowing as they regarded the figures. "You've made a mistake. Coming here. After her." The beings seemed to hesitate, their glowing eyes flickering with a mix of defiance and caution. It was clear they weren't used to being challenged. The alien girl couldn't look away. The air crackled with an unspoken tension. She had no idea who this newcomer was, but they were the first person, alien or human, who had shown the slightest bit of resistance to these beings. One of the creatures took a step toward the stranger, its voice cold. "This does not concern you." The stranger's lips curled into a thin smile. "It does now." The alien girl felt her pulse quicken. The situation was spiraling out of control faster than she could keep up. Who was this stranger, and how had they known where to find her? Why had they come to her aid now, of all moments? Was there more at play here than she had realized? She'd been so focused on surviving, on understanding what it meant to be human, that she hadn't even considered the possibility of other forces being involved, forces that may have known of her mission long before she set foot on Earth. The stranger moved again, this time raising their hand in a deliberate gesture. The air shimmered with energy, an invisible force crackling through the atmosphere. The alien girl's breath caught in her throat as a sudden burst of light shot from the stranger's palm, slamming into one of the figures. The impact sent the creature crashing backward, its form flickering as if the light had pierced through its very essence. The others recoiled, their glowing eyes now filled with a flicker of something she couldn't quite read. Was it fear? Anger? The alien girl couldn't tell. But it was clear that whatever power this stranger possessed, it was unlike anything she had ever seen before. The figure that had been struck slowly rose to its feet, its glowing eyes now dimmed, almost flickering like a dying flame. "You will regret this," it hissed, its voice low and venomous. But the stranger didn't flinch. Instead, they looked at the alien girl, their expression unreadable. "You need to come with me," they said. Now, the alien girl's mind reeled. There was so much she didn't understand. So many questions, so many things left unsaid. Who were these beings? What were they really after? And what did this stranger know that she didn't? Before she could respond, the remaining figures began to move again, this time more cautiously, almost as if they were regrouping. The alien girl felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. They weren't just here for her. They were here for something bigger, something more dangerous. She had become a pawn in a game far more complicated than she had ever imagined. "Don't make me say it again," Stranger warned, their voice sharp with urgency. "You need to leave." Now, the alien girl hesitated, torn between the strange pull of the world she'd come to understand and the overwhelming fear of what was happening. She had no idea what the stranger's true intentions were, but she knew one thing: if she stayed here any longer, she might not make it out alive. But as she started to move toward the stranger, something inside her stopped her. A sense of dread crept through her chest. Something was wrong. The figures had stopped moving, their glowing eyes now fixed not on the alien girl, but on the stranger. And in that moment, the alien girl realized this was no rescue. This was a trap. The figures weren't just hunting her. They were hunting them both. And the true battle was only just beginning. The alien girl froze as the figure's glowing eyes now fixed on the stranger, who had once seemed like a potential ally. The world around them felt like it had slowed, every heartbeat echoing in her ears. She had been so certain that the stranger was the key to her survival, but now the tension in the air shifted. It was a subtle change, a barely perceptible shift in the atmosphere. The figures didn't just seem like they were waiting for something, they seemed to be preparing for something. And then it hit her. The trap wasn't for her alone. It was for both of them. Before she could act, one of the beings stepped forward, its presence almost overwhelming in the darkness. "You've come a long way to protect her," it said, its voice cold and unfeeling. "But you can't save her. You can't even save yourself." The stranger didn't flinch, but the alien girl could see the subtle tension in their stance. This wasn't the fight they had expected, but even so, there was no doubt in their eyes. They were ready for whatever came next. The alien girl's mind raced. What was this all about? Who were these beings? And why was the stranger so confident they could face them down? Without warning, the figures surged forward, faster than she could process. The alien girl's instincts kicked in, but she was still unfamiliar with this human body, and it wasn't quick enough to keep her out of harm's way. One of the figures moved in, reaching for her, its fingers like cold iron, its intent clear. Before she could react, the stranger launched forward with a speed that left her stunned. A burst of light filled the air as the stranger collided with the figure, sending it crashing to the ground. The alien girl could feel the power radiating from them, an energy that vibrated through the ground beneath her feet. The figure struggled to rise, but it wasn't fast enough. In one swift movement, the stranger unleashed another blast of energy, causing the creature to disintegrate into nothingness. For a brief moment, everything was still. The remaining beings stared, disbelief flickering in their eyes. The alien girl's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process what had just happened. The stranger wasn't just strong. They were something else. Something far more powerful than the figures hunting them. But before she could fully comprehend it, another twist unfolded. One of the remaining figures, who had been watching from the back, stepped forward. There was something different about them. Their gaze wasn't cold or unfeeling. Instead, there was a flicker of something darker, an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," it said, its voice more subdued, almost regretful. The alien girl's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected this. This figure was different. Its voice didn't carry the same icy certainty as the others. There was a vulnerability in its words, a hesitance that made her question everything. What was this? A trap within a trap? A betrayal? Suddenly, everything clicked. The stranger had known more than they had let on. This wasn't just about her transformation or the beings who had been hunting her. It was about something far bigger, something involving the stranger, something they had been trying to protect. She wasn't the only one with a past here. They were all part of the same story. Before she could confront the figure, the last shock came. The figure that had spoken, the one who seemed different, raised its hand slowly. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a signal. A signal to the stranger. And in that moment, the world around them seemed to shift again. The beings stepped back, each one bowing their heads slightly, as if acknowledging something or someone more powerful than they were. The alien girl's breath caught in her throat as the figure in front of her turned to face the stranger, their eyes meeting with an understanding that sent chills down her spine. "We've been watching," the figure spoke softly, almost regretfully. "We were sent to stop you. But we don't need to fight." The alien girl's mind reeled. What was going on? What didn't they need to fight? The stranger's expression softened just slightly, but their voice was steady. "You've been playing this game far too long. You know what's at stake." The figure nodded. "It's not just her. It never was. It was about you, all along. You were the key to everything, to us all." The air felt electric. The revelation hit her like a ton of bricks. The entire conflict, everything she had thought she understood, wasn't about her. It had never been. It had been about the stranger all along. They were far more important than anyone had led her to believe. She wasn't a pawn in this game, she was a part of it. Her eyes widened. You're not human." It wasn't a question. She had suspected it, but now the pieces were falling into place. The stranger was no more human than the beings before them. The stranger gave a small nod. "No, I'm not. And neither are you, not anymore." The alien girl's world tilted as she took in the enormity of the situation. She had always known she wasn't fully human. But she had come to feel human. She had come to care, to understand. Now, she was confronted with the truth. The stranger had been part of a far bigger plan than she could have imagined. They had never come to help her. They had come to reclaim her. Her heart pounded as the pieces of the story fell together. The beings, the stranger, and even herself, none of it was random. She was part of something that spanned beyond Earth, beyond what she had ever known. The figure before them, the one who had shown regret, spoke again, this time softer. "We didn't want this to happen. But now, there's no going back. You've both changed too much." Their eyes shifted to the stranger. "And so has the universe. What's coming now, what's been set in motion will affect everything." The alien girl stood still, her mind reeling. Everything she had learned, everything she had come to understand, was just the beginning. The stakes were far higher than she had imagined. The truth wasn't just about her survival. It was about something far bigger, something that would change the course of her entire existence. And as the final confrontation loomed closer, she knew one thing for certain: whatever was coming, the world would never be the same. The alien girl's mind spun as the gravity of the situation finally began to sink in. Everything she thought she understood about her mission, her transformation, and even the stranger, was now shattered. She wasn't just a visitor on Earth. She was a part of something far bigger, something that had been set into motion long before she ever set foot on this planet. She looked at the stranger, who stood before her, the energy they radiated unlike anything she'd ever encountered. There was a calmness in their demeanor, but it wasn't the kind of calm one might expect before a battle. It was the calm of someone who had seen the course of history unfold before their eyes, someone who knew what was coming next. "We don't have much time," the stranger said softly, turning their eyes back to the remaining figures. "They will be back, and when they do, they'll have more than just their strength." The alien girl took a step back, trying to process everything she had just learned. The beings who had been hunting her weren't simply trying to stop her mission. They were trying to stop something far more dangerous. The truth was, they had never been after her specifically. No, they were after the potential that lay within her, within all of them. The beings she had encountered were protectors, but protectors of a fragile and ancient system that had been keeping the balance in check for eons. She could barely keep up with the shifting dynamics. The stranger wasn't just a rescuer, they were a part of that system, an integral piece of the puzzle that had been set in motion. Their arrival had been no accident, and neither had hers. She wasn't just an alien sent to observe humanity's evolution. She was part of a much larger plan that spanned galaxies, civilizations, and time itself. "You're a part of something much bigger than this planet," the stranger continued, as if sensing her thoughts. "We've watched as humanity developed, and we've kept you hidden, kept the truth hidden until now." Her thoughts raced as she struggled to grasp the enormity of what the stranger was saying. "Hidden? From who?" "The beings you just faced," the stranger said, nodding toward the fallen figures. "They are the keepers of the old order. They're here to prevent any more changes from happening, to stop evolution, to stop the future." Her heart skipped a beat. "But what does that mean for me?" "It means you've been chosen to carry out a task," the stranger said, their voice unwavering. "You are the catalyst for a new era. Your mission was never just to learn about humanity. It was to guide them toward what's next, to push them past their limits, to help them evolve beyond their current understanding." A heavy silence fell over the two of them, the weight of the stranger's words pressing down on her like an invisible force. She felt the enormity of the responsibility wash over her. She had been trying so hard to understand what it meant to be human, to live among them, but she hadn't realized that she was being prepared for something even greater. She looked at the fallen figures, her thoughts shifting to the moments of fear and uncertainty she had experienced. They had been relentless in their pursuit, not because they feared her, but because they feared what she represented. The future. Change. "They don't want the future," the alien girl whispered, her voice barely audible. "They want to keep things the way they are. But change is inevitable, isn't it?" The stranger nodded. "It always has been. That's why we're here, to make sure the change happens." As the stranger spoke, a sudden sound broke the silence, a low, rumbling hum that grew louder with each passing second. The alien girl turned, her eyes narrowing as she saw the sky flicker, the stars above shifting in a way that felt unnatural. The figures had returned, but they weren't alone. The sky seemed to pulse with energy, as if the very atmosphere was vibrating with the arrival of something else, something far more powerful. "We don't have much time," the stranger repeated, urgency now in their voice. "They're calling in reinforcements. We need to finish this now." The alien girl's instincts kicked in. She had no idea what she was truly capable of. But she knew one thing: she couldn't back down now. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival anymore. She was fighting for humanity's future and her own place in it. The strange power inside her that she had been feeling ever since her transformation, the one that had been dormant, was now awakening. It was as if the very core of her being was coming alive, as if she was becoming more than just an observer. The stranger stepped back, their eyes intense. "You're ready. You've always been ready." The alien girl turned to face the oncoming storm. The figures were closing in, but this time she wasn't afraid. Her hands trembled with energy as it surged through her, filling her with a power she had never known she possessed. It was her moment, their moment. As the first figure lunged toward her, she raised her hand. A surge of light erupted from her palm, so bright it was almost blinding. The force of the blast sent the figure sprawling backward, its body writhing as if the energy itself was burning through it. The alien girl's heart pounded in her chest, her breath quickening as she realized just how much power she had. She could feel the energy coursing through her veins, growing stronger with every passing second. This was her destiny. This was why she had come to Earth. The stranger moved in tandem with her, their own energy crackling in the air as they joined the fight. The remaining figures hesitated for only a moment, but it was enough. The power that the alien girl wielded was too much for them to withstand. One by one, the figures fell, their forms disintegrating into nothingness as the energy she unleashed tore through them. It didn't take long before the last of the figures lay in ruin, their glowing eyes dimming as their bodies crumbled to dust. The alien girl stood panting, her chest rising and falling with the intensity of the battle. She had won. But it wasn't just a victory for her, it was a victory for humanity. She had unlocked the potential inside her, and in doing so, she had ensured that humanity's future was no longer at the mercy of the old order. The stranger stood beside her, their expressions softening for the first time. "You've done it," they said. "You've fulfilled your purpose." But the alien girl wasn't sure she was done yet. She wasn't sure she ever would be. There was still so much to learn, so much to understand. The truth was, she hadn't just been given power, she had been given a responsibility. She wasn't just an alien living among humans. She was a guide, a leader. "Where do we go from here?" the alien girl asked, her voice steady. The stranger smiled, a rare softness in their eyes. "Wherever the future takes us." As the sky cleared and the dust settled, the alien girl stood tall. She had come to Earth to understand humanity. Now, she realized her true purpose: to help humanity understand itself and to guide them into a new era, one where change wasn't feared but embraced. And with that, she took the first step into the future she had always known was waiting for her.